Okay, good evening, colleagues. Good afternoon. I hope no good morning, but if there is any good morning to you. Welcome to the SFI Science Seminar Series. This is the fourth edition for 2023. So welcome you. As you might have noticed, we are taking panel discussion for the series we are having since the beginning of this year. I think it is um, a good method to really put discussion we have into perspective. I welcome you, and I would like you to relax and do your best to contribute to the discussion this evening. My name is Bright Wang, and I am the convener of this forum. I have my co-convener, Dr. Eman Sob. Eman, please, can you say a few words to our audience?
Thanks, Brian. Welcome, everyone. I am Iman Sobh, Associate Professor of Chest Diseases at Al-Azhar University, Cairo, Egypt, and I am the Coordinator of Science and Communication of African Science Frontiers Initiatives. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here. We have this seminar series during the first 6 months of this year. We have panel discussions about journal publishing, and we wish you will enjoy these sessions and discussions, and these discussions will contribute to your publishing experience. And if you are an editor or you are a reviewer in a journal or even an author, we wish you to share your experience with other colleagues in Africa for development and improvement in the publishing process. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Eman. So some housekeeping. As you see, usually we meet everyone on entry. That is to really keep the discussion tidy. A time will come when the audience will speak up. At that time, we'll unmute those who want to speak. Yeah, please, we can't let everyone introduce themselves on the mic. So use the chat box to introduce yourself. Say as many things you would like to say. There is no limit to that. But yeah, use that and try to connect. Many people have found peers, interest through this forum. So tell us who you are, where you're coming from, and what you do for a living. And I know you're working in the academia, so I'm talking about your field of interest. All right. And then this is recorded as well. So after the session this evening and the video populates, we make it available on the ASFI YouTube channel. So look out for it. And if you have not subscribed, subscribe to ASFI YouTube channel, and of course you can click the notification button so that once the videos are uploaded, you'll be notified. Okay. So this is what we have this evening. Journal publishing in the arts and humanities in Africa, global competitiveness, barriers and facilitators. And we'll have our panel. I will come back to introduce the very August panel we have this evening. So before that, let me give a brief discussion. This is customary, what we do to introduce what ASFI is. ASFI stands for African Science Frontiers Initiatives. That is an organization that started barely 3 years ago. And the vision we have is to raise the next generation of African scientists with the right competencies to drive Africa's developmental and transformational agenda through innovative scientific research. Now, what is the background? The background is that if you go through any ranking platform to rank science, to rank development, you see that Africa's contribution is quite abysmal. So we are not doing so much. We're not doing so much, and that is quite discouraging, to say the least, because eventually, do you hear me? Let me see if you see.
Yes, right.
All right, great.
Yes.
Okay. So we lag behind. We lag behind in scientific outputs and the quality of scientific outputs and the impact science is making on societies. And we also lag behind in terms of any indicator of development, whether from the technology point of view, whether from agriculture, whether from health, whether from politics, human rights, whatever you want to compare. Africa is the baby of the world. One thing we know is that if you globally look at what happens, there is a very high correlation between a thriving science, a society where science is thriving, where research is thriving, and the development of societies. And that is an indication that research science has an important role to play in a nation's development. For Africa, much is not happening. And that can explain some of the woes we are experiencing as a people. And it is important that we can do our part as scientists to change this narrative. And that is why ASFI is here. That is why ASFI is born. That is why ASFI has come to you. And I believe that you will join the bandwagon to make Africa great again. All right, so we have the mission to instill excellence in Africa science through competence acquisition, capacity building, and career development. We want our endeavors, our research to contribute to tackling Africa's developmental challenges. Many people don't see their research as having any developmental impact, but that is a fallacy, really. And if you are able to spot some of those who are undertaking our ongoing course in research quality, productivity, and impact, they have a cocktail of arguments to defend that because they know that is not true. Every piece of research should have dimension of impact to the growth and development of the society. But one thing is that science and research cannot play its part in developing the society if it is not thriving. It needs to thrive. And for it to thrive, scientists need to have the right skills to do their work. Okay? And one of the things we have noticed is that one of the big elephants in the room that stampede African science from thriving is the lack of capacity. Lack of capacity, lack of adequate competence of scientists in Africa. And ASFI wants to bridge this. by introducing excellence. And those who have followed us up to this point know that we are actually not joking when we talk about these things. If you want to prove what I'm saying, join us. Then you will see that I mean every word I am saying here. All right, we have different programs, seminars, as we have this evening. We have workshops. For instance, Dr. Warren's research tips and tricks. We have hands-on courses. All our courses are hands-on, which means you can have the skills by doing. So you come and you have to do it. All right, that is the way we learn. So we have different courses that cover all aspects of the scientific research process. The course we have going on now actually start from teaching you how to formulate a research question. Okay, and it's exciting. We had the last session was yesterday. And then we'll continue every weekend. It was exciting to see these discussions we can have in very, very exciting ways. How do you formulate a question? And then from there, we build how to develop data collection, how to collect your data, how to make sense of the data, how to analyze it, how to interpret it, how to publish it. So we cover every aspect. And then we'll have other things that we use to support our trainings. We have science leadership, communication, and so on and so forth. My colleagues who are here, Dr. Eman Sob and Dr. Ajibola Oladejo, will be giving you some of the links. You can go to ASFI website to see some of the information that are helpful to give you ideas on some of this. We have mentoring program. We also have ongoing research activities. All right. So we have started 3 years ago, and so far we have trained over 1,500 African scientists. All right, across the different courses we have. And we have received tremendous amount of applications across these courses, to over 7,000 applications we have received. And we are currently running the 11th edition of these courses. Apart from the one we are running currently, most of the courses we run are full week course, ranging from 7 to 8 hours each day for each. So it's very intensive, but you live each week. We drain you, but you live with a lot of things. You may live with confusion from where you have started. You may live with excitement. You may live with tools that will change your career forever. Trust me, you can join the next course. So this year, building on the experience we have had over the last 2.5 years, we develop our team on quality, productivity, and impact. And shortly to explain, we need high quality research, all right, for Africa. We don't want to be publishing things that have no meaning. We want to do quality research and the strategies of that. Okay, at the same time, we need to be productive. Many times people define productivity in the wrong way. Number of papers you publish, maybe the amount of money you get, number of students you supervise, number of courses you're teaching. Those are very good things, okay? But in terms of research, we have a way of defining productivity. But in essence, this year, we want to support African scientists to become more productive in their research endeavor. And then finally, impact. As I said before, every scientific activity, research should have impact. And impact is what is the benefits the society derives from the research you do. The benefits your field of research derives from the research you do. And so we want to make a shift in the paradigm in the way we understand our research to make you think more of impact and quality. All right, when you think more of impact and quality, you put the necessary ingredients, then productivity becomes a natural outcome that comes from your research. So this year is loaded. Our courses outlined. We have Dr. Warren's tips and tricks, have the different things that are there. Bootcamp, digital conference coming up, and so on and so forth. So please don't miss any of this. And then the seminar series, we have divided it into two. The first half of the year, we'll be dealing with surveying the landscape of journal publishing in Africa. And the next half of the year, we'll be looking at the landscape of research funding. We want to know what are the current issues related to journal publishing. So to formulate our discussions around this. And then July to December, we want to look at issues of funding. And these are very important issues, really. As you will see from our discussion this evening, we are looking at the field of arts and humanities, but that concerns every field. So for the next half of the year, looking at research funding, this is critical because I don't know the percentage anyway, but I can see that many African scientists have at one time point in their career used their personal money to do research. All right, that is one thing that is unheard about. You can't hear it here. Somebody's using his money to do. No, it can't happen. Okay, because you are an employee of the society and a society that funds research. Okay, but you can't kick African scholars so hard on this because they are within a context. Some of the questions people will ask you, where do you get the money? Well, how do I get the money? I don't even know who funds this research I do. Even if I know how it's very competitive, I don't have the skills to write fundable research. And so these are the things we'll be looking at in the second half. And if you are struggling with funding, how to do it, where to find it, situations, please don't miss any of this. It is for you. It is free of charge. It will be enlightening. It will help you to rethink your strategies. Yeah, the big talk in town now is that the long-awaited ASFI data analysis course, you have bombarded us with so many questions. When is it coming? The good news is it is here. The data analysis course, we have titled it Making Sense of Data. That is a big title, Making Sense of Data. Principles and strategies of data analysis and software. Principles and strategies of data analysis and software. This is very important because many times people don't know how to collect the data in this course that we present to you. If I collect the data, what do I do with it? How do I clean it? How do I edit it? How do I analyze it? Which approach do I use to analyze my data? How do I interpret my data? What software? How do I use the software? I've heard about SPSS, I've heard about Stata, I've heard about R. What do I do with those? All right. And if analyze, how do I interpret? How do I write it up? How do I publish it? This course is loaded. If you miss it, please don't blame us. You can see the cost there, say, this is too much. But I tell you, those who are ASFI members enjoy lots of benefit, okay? And I don't think I'll be here canvassing you and pushing you. In fact, if you have not joined and then you hear what they are getting, what they're enjoying, then you know that already you have missed a lot. Why? Because the membership is a 12-month membership from January to December. So if you join now, it means that you have lost. It means you're supposed to gain before now. That is just to tell you, if you want to join in time, enjoy the benefits. So the members will seriously subsidize their fees for these trainings. All right, so yeah, you can see some of the benefits the members get. You can find all this on the ASFI website. And the joining, if you do not have a PhD yet, then the membership fee per annum is $20. This is something some people here, especially those in Nigeria, I don't know what happens. If you go to Chicken Republic in Nigeria, some people spend 10 times this just to eat chicken, okay? But for a year, you are enjoying tremendous goodwill of scientific engagement. So don't come crying, I don't have $20. Then I will ask you, when last did you go to Chicken Republic? And if you have PhD and above, is $40. All right, so the membership, we bring lots of benefit, collaboration, networking, friendship, excellence, career development, capacity building, and so on and so forth. And one thing I forgot here, maybe I'll bring it before we finally end this evening, is we just had an essay competition. We call it ASFI Impact Essay Competition, and we had the three fantastic winners of that essay competition to write an essay about what ASFI has done to them since joining. And please, Dr. Oladejo, you can put the link to that. Go to ASFI website to read these fantastic stories of what their journey into what we do has been since. So 3 of them won that, and they have good reward for that. Okay, good reward for that. So we are happy for them. All right. So we are sure that joining the other members, you will have improved productivity in your research. The quality of your research will improve. All right. And it will make lasting impact. Why am I saying this? It's a place where you are actually stimulated. One of the important testimonials people give is a change of mindset and attitude towards research. They derive that because we challenge you. We challenge you to move from where you are to get to a better destination. Yeah, something is also going at the membership forum. Very fantastic thing. And we have few hours for this to end. The members are electing leaders to lead them. They're electing leaders to lead. And I'm just receiving the WhatsApp things happening there, and it is really fantastic that people are interested to occupy this position so that they can make a difference. Okay. And so people are going about campaigning for people to vote for them. It's really fantastic, and it's good. It shows how people value this engagement, and just to tell everyone that I love this. Okay, so just keep it up, because that is what we need to make a difference. So if you have not voted, just to let you know, you have opportunity. And of course, this is for only members. This is for only members, not for any other person. Members will vote members. So members who have not voted, you have until 12 midnight GMT. 12 midnight GMT to vote. After that, the voting will close. And then we will know those who are the leaders for the next 2 years. All right. So that is today's seminar, Journal Publishing in the Arts and Humanities in Africa. And that is what we'll be looking at in the panel discussion. My panelists are ready. And I'm going to introduce them. You can see them on the screen. The first is Professor Samson Warmer. He's originally Nigerian, but he is in Kenya. He has been there for a long time. He's currently at the Adventist University of Africa and is a professor of New Testament interpretation and applied theology. He received his PhD in religious studies from the Obafemi University in Nigeria, his master's and bachelor's from Andrews University, Berrien Springs, Michigan, USA. Prior to his current work now, he has served as the dean of the Theological Seminary at the same university, Adventist University of Africa, between 2013 and 2020. And before moving to Kenya, he was the dean of the School of Education and Humanities at Babcock University in Nigeria between 2011 and 2013. And also prior to that, he was a chair of religion and theology at Babcock University and vice dean of School of Graduate Studies at Babcock University. Professor Warmer has published around 86 scientific works, which include books, journal articles, and book chapters. He has presented over 70 talks at conferences, national, international conferences, and workshops. He's a reviewer for many, many journals and plays editorial part in many journals. For instance, he is the editor-in-chief of the Pan-African Journal of Theology. He is the executive editor of One Africa Initiative Journal, position which he still continues to hold at the moment. He is the associate editor-in-chief of Asia Africa Journal of Mission and Ministry. He is associate editor of African Journal of Biblical Studies, Journal of Nigerian Association for Biblical Studies. He was the editor up to 2013. He was the editor-in-chief for Contemporary Humanities, Journal of the Faculty of Education and Humanities, Babcock University, between 2011 and 2013. He is a consulting editor of Insight, Journal of Religious Studies at Babcock University currently. And he was chairman of the editorial committee of the Insight Journal of Religious Studies between 2009 and 2011. He was initiator and pioneer editor of that same journal. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is Professor Warmer, the first panelist we have, who will be giving us his insight based on the very rich profile he has built over the years. So you can see we have the right persons to make this discussion and to ask our question. The next online is Dr. Eunice Oyun Ponze from Bele. She's a Cameroonian and she's joining us from the University of Boa in Cameroon. She's an associate professor of African literature and cultural studies at the University of Boa. She is also the head of admissions and records at the same faculty in that university. Previously, she was head of administrative and financial division of the Faculty of Arts and the head of division in charge of research and publications in the central administration of the University of Boa. She has published over 30 articles in national and international journals, and including book chapters. She's the editor of Journal of English Language, Literature, and Culture. She has co-edited 3 books. She has an area of interest in gender and ecological relationships. She has interest in marginality discourses, decoloniality studies, infectious imaginations. When I was reading this, I said I will have a private discussion with her to understand what are these terms. I'm hearing some of them for the first time. It's quite interesting to see there are many things you don't know. And I know when I speak about this to my little girl, she will say, "Oh, Daddy, you didn't know this? I thought you knew everything." Anyway, infectious imaginations. That is my first time of hearing this terminology. I don't know what it means, ladies and gentlemen. She also has interest in literary socio-linguistics and narrative ethics. She's a member of a host of professional organizations, but I will mention one she put here, which is of interest to me. She's a member of the African Science Frontiers Initiatives. You can see that. So it's a pride to. I will leave the other ones. If you want to read the other ones, please consult her. But just to let you know, she's a bona fide member of ASFI. Other roles she has played, she has been a chairperson of the African Science, or she's still there, Digital Science Boot Camp. So she's chairing that to plan the boot camp for this year. And she co-organized conferences and postgraduate seminars in her universities and supporting also in Cameroon. She has had various talks at universities, different universities in Cameroon. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome on board Dr. Fonse from Bele to this discussion this evening. And finally, not the least, I have Dr. Kobina Esia Donko, who is joining us from Ghana. Dr. Esia Donko is an associate professor at Department of Population and Health, University of Cape Coast in Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you understand that he is coming from the best university in Africa. He is currently the head of department of that particular department. He holds a PhD in endogenous development. That is another term I am hearing for the first time because I'm working in the area of asthma and I'm interested in the role of sex steroids. And we have a term, we have 2 terms actually. We have exogenous sex steroids and endogenous. But in terms of development, I didn't know that term can be found here. Endogenous development from the University of Development Studies in Tamale in Ghana. Dr. Asia Donko has interest in indigenous knowledge in population, environment and development, sexual and reproductive health and rights, HIV and AIDS studies, and multi-stakeholder processes. He has over 20 peer-reviewed publications, including technical papers, and has made over 30 presentations at both local and international conferences and workshops. He has provided consultancy services to a host of international organizations and national ones that I can't mention. There are so many, just to show you how engaged and busy he is. He has also served as a board member and committee member to several organizations, and he is currently a member of the Curriculum Review Committee of the Ghana Statistical Service. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel is complete, and we will have to engage with our discussion this evening. So I will just find them. I'll find them here to make them unmute themselves, and so that we can get into this discussion. And I think please show your picture when you're speaking. And the final person I have here is Dr. Eunice. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the discussion. I don't see their pictures. Are they here? All right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Now, one thing I want to start with. I will start with Professor Samson Warmer. And this is the question I usually start with the panelists in other disciplines, is to know which is the leading journal in Africa in the arts and humanities.
Well, I think, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for attending this very important seminar. There is not any catalog that actually ranks the journals in the area of humanities on the continent of Africa. And I think it might also be very difficult to talk about a particular leading one because of the subsets of humanities. So I don't think it might be very easy to single out a particular one, because for the fields of history, maybe talk about linguistics, talk about religious studies, or talk about English, they may have, or even maybe library studies, they may have their own preferences. So I think it may not be very easy to come up with a single one that may be considered. Perhaps maybe as part of the effort of ASI on this continent, maybe the project of ranking journals in the various fields might be taken up as we discussed today, and then we may be able to classify them based on the subsets of humanities, which one we may consider top amongst the others.
Thank you, Prof, for that. I think that is a good challenge, and we have actually been considering this issue. It's not an easy undertaking, but it's something that is doable. But what is your experience outside Africa? Have you noticed leading journals in the arts and humanities outside Africa?
I think I would still say that it might be difficult to bring out one as general, because arts and humanities is an umbrella that has many sub-disciplines. So if I say, for example, that the Journal for Society for Biblical Literature is top, then somebody in history will say that is not his own. So I think it might still be difficult because, but in my area of studies, in my area of interest, outside Africa, we can talk about Journal of New Testament Studies, Journal for Society of Biblical Literature, Evangelical Theological Journal. There are several of them. There are several of them, but I don't think we can use one measurement for all the sub-disciplines in arts and humanities.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Okay, Dr. Esia Donko, let me come to you now. Prof. Wama has given us insight. There are various sub-disciplines. Which journals in Africa in your own field, Dr. Esia Donko, attracts you? You always want to publish in them in Africa.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. I think I agree with Professor Wama to a large extent, that it is difficult to actually single out one journal. However, we also know that in contemporary science, there are indicators that usually some institutions or databases or whatever you may call them come out with a ranking, usually based on the H index or the GIF, General Impact Factor, GIF. And so if you want to be more quantitative, then you can say that then let's use either the H index or the impact factor to rank the journals in Africa, and then to say that this one has the highest H index, highest GIF, and therefore it is the best. So probably when we scan through Africa, and you say arts and humanities, and as Prof indicated, it's an umbrella that contains so many disciplines, even including business in some institutions. And so a check will let us know, probably South African, maybe the African Journal of Business Management has a high impact factor, 31. We have the Journal of South Africa Journal of Science, that is a multidisciplinary journal, which also has a higher H index and GIF. And so these are the indicators that we can use quickly to say that this journal is bigger or is ranked higher in Africa. When I saw humanities, I was asking myself, what are the issues? What are the disciplines, for instance? And so if we take, for example, the South African Journal of Science, it's a multidisciplinary journal. It has a higher impact factor, of 21.6, and others have lower than that. I know South African Journal of Education, that is also high. Usually, in my preference, and as you rightly asked, we have the African Journal of Sexual and Reproductive Health. I think it has a good impact factor. I'm have to check it, but it may rank maybe when it comes to journals that focus on sexual reproductive health. Probably it may rank top in Africa. But as Prof said, there are different disciplines. And so as you are saying that sexual reproductive health journal has the highest, somebody will say, what about journal of, say, development? And then you have to look at all these ranks and then check. So that is what I may have to comment when it comes to your question that you asked.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I think that is fair enough as well. So we are getting into more problems of diversities in discipline, which is a good problem actually, and I think it calls us to be aware of these nuances. But let me come to you, Dr. Fonse from Bele. You are coming from the aspect of literature and cultural studies. Which journals actually stand out for you in your area? Where is she? Is she here now? Okay, so please unmute yourself and tell us which journals stand out for you in your area.
Yeah, good evening, Prof.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, it's a very good initiative we have here because many people come to publishing and many people do not understand the field of publishing, but we keep publishing and sometimes we run into problems. So I am happy that we are putting this discussion into perspective. As far as your question on is concerned, the best journal, as I can say for now, is the journal that is African based. It's in Southern Africa. It is the English Academy Review. The English Academy Review, where every person in the literature and cultural studies will love to publish. So if you love to publish as an African, a top tier journal in your field, you want to think of the English Academy Review in South Africa. And as the prof has said, the two profs have said, actually, what we observe is that each discipline has its priorities. Each discipline has its priority, and at the same time, in each discipline, you have various thematic areas with their own specialties and their own preferences. For example, you have history, you will have Journal of Peace and this, which historians would like to publish there and sell themselves. But other historians in archaeology may have their own journal, which is a journal of archaeology, which to them, if you don't publish there, you have not yet started, and things like that. So it's a complicated area, which really needs a discussion as we are doing today. And I'm happy that we have started this discussion, and many people should be able to start knowing that journal publishing is an area that you need to study before you dabble into it. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Fonse from Bele. Okay, let me go back to Professor Warmer. Now, it's a good problem we have here because now we can get different perspectives from theology and religion to developmental studies to literature and culture. I mean, this is a very small proportion of what arts and humanities represent, but it's giving us a good feedback, and we can see the challenges that are there when you try to match the fields, to look at them with one lens. You need different lenses to do that. Okay, Prof. Warmer, the next question I have is that how often do you publish in African-based journals as compared to attraction of publishing outside Africa?
Well, I think that if I take a census of my publications, I would say that perhaps maybe except in Southern American region, and perhaps also maybe in the Oceanic, except these two regions, I think I've published extensively in Africa, Asia, Europe, and also America. So I wouldn't really say I have a preference. Sometimes also is the nature of what you are trying to disseminate. You see, because sometimes what you are trying to disseminate in your research may have a contextual relevance. And if you pursue a publication that is too distant from the locality of relevance, where of course you may, of course, as we will say today, you may have achieved maybe some personal satisfaction, but the question also is how relevant will it be to the audience? So I think for myself, I have relatively published, except for the two regions I've mentioned. So I don't really have a preference. It's the nature of what I'm publishing, it's the relevance of what I'm publishing, and then sometimes also the acceptance of the journals too can also be a factor, because you may send a paper somewhere, maybe they may assess it, and in the context of the journal, they may think that is not quite relevant for their area, and then you send it elsewhere. So that has been my approach even till now.
Okay, that is very, very important and fantastic to note, because the other fields we have discussed, I've not heard somebody, putting up this viewpoint. There are things, because I wanted to follow up with another question was, I mean, since you didn't have preference, but the next question I wanted to follow up was, what are the attractions and distractions from publishing in Africa? What are the attractions and distractions?
Okay, I think I may talk about three factors, especially in the context in which we live in Africa. My co-panelists have mentioned some high impact journals. So I would say maybe today in most universities, an awful of emphasis is placed on foreign publication. Although sometimes foreign publication is considered synonymous with quality publication, but I differ, because you can publish locally, provided that document or what we have researched on is of high quality. So I think that one reason why some African authors prefer to submit their manuscripts outside of the continent is because of the fact that they consider some of the journals outside of Africa as high impact journals. They are highly visible, and then they are also indexed. I say they are also indexed. And because of the universities also that some of us operate in, when it comes to ranking the papers that are published in the country or within the continent, for whatever reason, some committees may regard those ones published locally as of low quality. But like I mentioned earlier on, that actually is not something that I would want to consider. So the three major factors to summarize will be the argument that the journals outside of Africa, some of them are high impact, but we know there are also very many predatory journals that outside Africa. And then the issue of heavily being indexed there, and then also the question of maybe visibility, because every researcher, except you consider an immediate relevance or a contextual relevance to what you are publishing, every researcher desires to be read widely, to be referenced widely. I see, for people to be able to assess what is published or she's publishing, and then of course you can also have the privilege of being read all over the globe and even be referenced all over the globe. So these are some of the things that I may consider as part of the problem. Then partly again, although that may not be very, very strong, because we know that some journals outside of Africa charge fee, but I think one reason also is that for some of these very high impact journals that have very good funding supporting the journals, they do not normally charge a fee. But basically, for most journals within the continent here and even in Asia, they charge fees. And sometimes too, people may prefer to publish in where they are given the benefit of that based on the quality of the manuscript they have submitted. not necessarily because of how much they are able to pay. So I think these are some issues that I may point out.
Okay, before I go to this person, now the what I see from the point you have made is the attraction for publishing outside. But what are the attractions for somebody in your field to publish in Africa?
Okay, of course, I would say that sometimes, it is quite difficult. The journals outside, let me take, for example, what my colleagues have mentioned, and even my field also. Sometimes the level of competition to be accepted to be published in some of these journals outside Africa, especially those ones that don't publish for a fee and not predatory in nature, the level of competition is very, very high because they are looking for quality. And so there is the desire for homegrown journals. So you see institutions, you see some independent publishers trying to promote homegrown journals to be able to provide platform for people to publish locally. I say locally. I think that the next thing also is the frequency of publication, because some of the very high impact journals that go for quality, from experience, even recently I had a manuscript after 2 years, just being, I think, just ready to be published. The patience may not be there for some. The patience may not be there for some. To wait for 1.5 years, for 2 years, for you to be published. Whereas the frequency of publication in local journals, some publish monthly, some quarterly. And, some of our colleagues are looking for the next promotion. And they know they cannot wait for 1 year, they can't wait for 6 months. So they will prefer to publish in local journal that have a high frequency of publication. Maybe within a quarter, they are published twice. Some even go monthly. That is two. The third thing, which actually is a bit negative, but I think is also a motivating factor, is that from my experience too, sometimes the regional journals, let me use that term, regional journals, rather than African journals. Some of the regional journals, sometimes the quality of the editorial and peer review processes are not very, very robust. I say are not very, very robust. And so there are people who just want whatever they have written to be published. I say to be published. And it is easier to have them published in maybe some regional journals or maybe local journals that are not very, very interested or keen, I think, in quality editorial processes or even peer review processes. So these are some of the reasons that I may adduce that sometimes motivate people to consider just some local journal. And also today, like our graduate PhD doctoral students in some countries, it is required now, like in the country of Kenya here, doctoral students are required to publish 2 articles from their dissertation or thesis, different the way it is called from place to place, before they are allowed to graduate. Again, sometimes also the desire to graduate at a particular time can also make people to look for any journal that is willing to accept their manuscripts. So these are some of the factors, either for graduate students or for young scholars, or even for maybe experienced scholars who just feel that they just want to publish and don't want to go through the rigors and challenges, tough time, and the rest of them of some of these journals that outside the African continent.
Yeah, you have really mentioned a number of things that are very, very interesting, and putting in the context what the African researcher faces. We'll come back to some of these issues you have mentioned to see how we can elaborate them more. Let me go to Dr. Asia Donko, to ask you the same question. Now you have published. You are younger than Prof. Woma, but you see a career. You want to publish more. So far, if you look back, what is a proportion of your publications that are published in African-based journals? And if I add to that, what are the attractions and distractions for you in making that decision to publish in Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. In fact, when you asked Professor Wama the question, I was just doing a reflection on my publications and to see the percentage of the journal, papers that I have published in Africa journals. But probably let me indicate this, that when I was appointed as the lecturer, my mentor indicated that as a starter, I have to work within the local journals and the regional journals, and then gain experience, and then use that as a platform to go up to other high impact journals within and outside the continent. And so the formative years in my teaching career, most of my papers were in Africa, Ghana, and I think one was also in the reproductive health, sexual reproductive health journal. And so perhaps if I'm to look at a subjective analysis, do a subjective analysis, I may say that 10% of my publications
10%.
Yes, which is way inadequate. But probably I may have to adduce some reasons, and probably the reasons may not only be limited to my career, but to other persons, and most of them Prof had indicated. But let me situate this within the theory of choice. You see, when you look at the theory of choice by Glaser, he talks about the fact that human beings are motivated, to in a quest to satisfy some basic needs, and some of these basic needs include love and belongingness. You want to belong to a particular group of people. You want to be powerful. You want to be recognized. And
Yeah.
so that informs that theory. Is the basis for people's choice for journals. And as Prof had indicated earlier, we can have institutional issues, institutional, factors. And he mentioned that some institutions recognizes some journals and de-recognizes other journals. In my institution, you are supposed to publish in journals that are linked to Scopus, that have H index, that are journals that have impact factor high. And so for your promotion, you need to have not less than 5 or 4. If you want to become an associate professor or full professor, at least 4 of your journals should be in this index and journals. And so it will motivate people to select and to belong, as the theory indicates. Whilst we wish to publish in local journals, we may also have issues related to co-authorship, and that also comes in when you are selecting a journal. For instance, you've done a paper with co-authors who are in Africa and outside Africa, and you have to come together to think about the journal that was to be able to satisfy all the interests of these co-authors. And that usually, for instance, we did a study, and then the lead, the PI indicated that we are supposed to publish the findings, and then indicated the journals that we are supposed to publish in, and none was found in Africa, you see. And so in some cases, your partners may also determine where to publish. And that had informed most of the choices I have made in selecting a journal. But the other side, which Prof mentioned, is the financial issue. Whilst you may have open access journals scattered across the globe, there are some journals who are also paying you back for sending your papers to be published, like the BMs, like the UK-based journals. And in my department, young researchers are publishing in UK-based journals because they will get financial returns. And so if you have one or few or maybe none of such journals in Africa, then you will see that the interest will drift into beyond the Mediterranean or the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, but the attraction in African journals is the contextual underpinnings. For instance, I tried publishing a paper which is outside Africa, and then they told me that the context that the paper contains is not global enough, and therefore I need to rethink a different journal. And I realized that yes, the content was purely African, and therefore had to come back to Africa. So the context within which the paper or the research is situated makes it attractive. And here I'm talking about if it is situated in Africa, then African journals become more attractive. The other has to do with the distractives or the distractions that you mentioned. And Prof indicated that, the frequency of publication, whilst it could be a positive in Africa, in some journals also, it is a distractor. I sent a paper to a journal, and we went through all the peer review process, and that one is being had to come by with a charge. We paid the charge, and to date, that paper had never been published. And now I cannot publish in any way because the data is dead. We say the data is dead, it means the facts are too old now. You see, and this in the Africa Journal. And so while some have a high frequency in publication, others also, for a reason that we may not easily understand, become distraction. And therefore people may think that, why don't I publish elsewhere where I may get my publication, by getting the paper published early so that I get my publication. So these are both the attractions and the distractions that we can find in Africa journals. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. That's quite informative. Okay, let me go to Dr. Fonze from Bele to also ask the same question. From what you have published so far, what percentage or proportion of your publication is based in Africa, and what are the attractions and distractions for you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. I'm sorry I cannot start my video because the weather is bad and the network is not good. So when I start the video, I drop out.
All right, just go ahead.
So yeah. Yeah, looking at my publications I am basically of African literatures. I am basically a decolonial scholar. And so there is this internal conflict. When I keep running to established journals abroad, when is Africa going to be established? That is usually the question in my mind when I think of the prestige that one can have publishing abroad. I publish abroad in journals where sometimes you are paid for publishing, as Prof just said. But at the same time, I always think that Africa also needs to come up to a certain level of competition. And if we have to come up to a certain level of competition, we will not have to always keep running to journals that are already established abroad. We need to do something to promote the home publishing industry to come to a certain level of competition, because this thing, we're in a university and everything has to be universal. Our famous Professor Bernard Fonlon used to say that we have 3 trinities in the university. We have the printing press, we have the library, and we have the bookshop. And so once we're in African universities, we are also universities, and we need to bring ourselves to that level of competition. And we will not bring ourselves to that level of competition when we will keep on running to where people have established themselves. So my question usually is, how do I also contribute to take Africa to a certain level? And one of the things that have helped me is that in our Cameroonian development program that is related to research, they are also promoting African publications, by way of saying that you can change grades with about 30% of publications coming from out of Africa, and about 70% of publications coming from within Africa. So now we have structural problems, both soft and hard structural problems as Africans that we need to think of. We have systemic problems as Africans that we need to think of. But at the same time, from a personal level, I also have to start thinking. And so I have a passion for promoting home-based publishing, but I also have a hatred for that home-based industry that runs after money. Because we have, as I said, we have structural and systemic problems. And so most of our publishing industries do not have a financial backing. And so sometimes the way we react and act is like we are predatory journals somehow, meanwhile we are not. I had an experience where I sent my journal out of Africa, and the review to me is not the best. I feel that this is not the best to me. And I send and I retrieve my article officially, and I send it to a university journal in Cameroon. And the feedback that comes to me gives me another 1 month to work on that paper. And I'm very satisfied with the feedback, and I'm very satisfied with the final product. So Africans are doing a lot out of nothing, and we need to appreciate that first. Africans are doing a lot out of nothing. We don't have grants, we don't have soft infrastructure, we don't have hard infrastructure, but we're doing a lot of research. And then we're selling this data out, you know, and international people are making great use of it, and then bringing it back to us, and we are consuming without knowing that this is actually initially our product. So
now you're killing me. You're killing me here. This discussion is taking a dimension that is because you're killing me here. Okay, sorry, I'm not stopping you. We bring this up again, but really, you're bringing issues that we need to think about carefully. Look, so Africa is full of lots of conflicts. That is the point you're making. and we don't understand the space we have found ourselves. That because I went back to your areas of interest. I'm still looking at these infectious imaginations, and then you mentioned the coloniality studies. So you want to bring us back again, okay? One of the conflicts Prof. Former mentioned was the issue of quality, and some of the structural challenges you have put. So I want us to move to the direction of now preferring solutions. We have seen ourselves entangled in this problem now. What is the way out? What is the way out? Because if you bring Africans to come back home and publish, are we able to deal with it? I will come back to you, Dr. Fonze from Bell. Let me go to Professor Nwoma. From the point she's making, because I see that you are also getting interested in this point. If we say African scholars publish in Africa, are we able to deal with this situation, given the context we find ourselves nowadays?
Well, I think that knowledge is universal. Although we still know that some aspects of knowledge are contextual. So it might be very difficult to say that Africans should publish nowhere else except Africa. Those who, if I take, for example, people like Wole Soyinka, who, of course, a well-known name, even though he writes from an African context and worldview, but is actually a global knowledge that is disseminated. When it comes to also scholars today, whether in the field of, since we're dealing with humanities, whether we are talking about decolonizing or we are talking about maybe in areas of food science. So I would say first and foremost that knowledge is global, universal. It's a fountain that anywhere around the world, anyone can drink from, even though the framework and the worldview may be a bit different. So I would not say that Africans should publish nowhere else except Africa. Now, having said that, if we say that we should publish here, you know, when we began, I threw a challenge because when I was going through preparation for this program, that was a very strong body in my mind. And you remember when you asked that question, none of us could actually come out to say, this is the journal, because we are coming from different perspectives. So if we say Africans should publish in Africa, I would suggest that one way of doing it also may be maybe using this platform to begin to see how we can strengthen some journals on the continent of Africa, not just sub-Sahara. I know those of us who are speaking this evening, most of three of us are from sub-Sahara. But the good thing is that one of your co-hosts, convener is actually from the Maghreb. So I don't think that it will be possible. But on the practical perspective, the issue of funding is very, very major. Very, very, very major. So how do we make universities to see investment in research as investment that is worth it? How do we make that? Then two, how do we also make our millionaires buy into publication? Africa has a lot of people who ordinarily should be able to fund the academia, but that is not a priority. It's entertainment, it's sports, and the rest of them. So how do we make that to happen? I think that is also one other thing. Then the third thing also is there might be need, yes, a journal based here in Kenya, a journal based in Cameroon or Egypt or South Africa or Ghana. The intentionality, like where I belong, where I work here, there is the requirement that for you to float a journal, if it's a university-based journal, the editorial board must actually represent a global picture, not just local. So I also think that if we are able to push in this direction, then our colleagues who want to publish locally may not just see that what they are publishing locally is low in context or in quality. In quality, I think that also is something that that may be able to help in that regard.
Okay, Prof.
Finally,
All right, make your final point.
okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, yeah. Finally, I think that our sister earlier on, the doctor from Cameroon, talked about the challenging infrastructure. Infrastructure. I also think that that is another area that if adequate attention is given, of course, it still boils down to funding. Because if there is no funding, most universities are even struggling to pay faculty and staff. But if there's an adequate funding that can provide this infrastructure at university levels, I think that may also encourage our scholars on the continent to consider publishing on the continent, and then where need be, also publish outside the continent.
Mhm. All right, thank you, Prof. We'll push this forward. Let me go to you, Dr. Esia Donko. And my question is, within your field or your perspective, seeing what happens in Africa, do you think there are so many, I mean, we have too much journals in each field in Africa, and can that be a contributor to this challenge of poor quality? Do we have so many journals, more than we can carry?
Thank you. It will be difficult for me to tell whether we have too many journals. Perhaps what we can do is to look at the number of researchers in Africa and then do researcher journal ratio and see if we have a standard to measure and say that then we have too many journals. But I think one thing that had been mentioned is standardization, which I agree perfectly with Prof. You know, whether too many or too few, the question of standardization is key, so that the interest, or even if you want to apply the rule of choice, then choosing an African journal is consistently same as choosing any journal outside Africa, because then the standards, the peer review process, and everything related to the editorial are similar to what you can find elsewhere, and then the standard is as same as what you can find elsewhere. If we maintain this, then we can have a say to say that we have too many or too few, because it would be difficult for me to say that all the journals in Africa have the same standards that the global standard for publication had been established. I doubt that. If I can cite a particular example, I wanted to publish in a journal outside Africa, and the comments that I received, one of it which made the journal not to publish, was that I didn't have ethical clearance. And so I tried to see if I can get it in Africa, and I succeeded. You see, so it means that the standards are not the same. And if we establish the standards to be the same, I think everybody will have the peace to publish in Africa, and also to get whatever intentions for publication, either for promotion or for recognition or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I would like to say about that.
All right, thank you, Prof. Dr. Fonse from Bele, let me come back to you. Now, the point you were making, you use the term decolonization. All right. I've not heard this point I want to make in so much. Has she left, or she has fallen outside? She has fallen out. I think so. Okay, she has fallen out. Okay, let me take it to Prof. Woma. One of the points she was making was to see how we can actually produce and consume knowledge in Africa. Because once we go out, we are selling it out. But I've heard from other fields that some of the reasons why they publish in international journals or journals outside Africa is the institutional requirement of counting the number of publications you have within, regionally, or outside, which counts in the promotion processes. Would that be a big barrier to the point Dr. Fonze Fombele was trying to make, the issue of decolonization?
Where I still think that when you are talking about decolonizing, I'm not in literature, but like you mentioned before, I mentioned people like Ole Soyinka, Sisam Nigeria, Chinua Achebe. The works that they did that gave them international fame are actually decolonizing, because they are actually writing as a protest against Western culture and civilization. So I don't really think that a research that promotes decolonization should be limited in context of publication. So I don't really think so. It can still be published outside the continent of Africa. In fact, this week twice on my way to somewhere here in Nairobi, I was listening to the BBC, and they were doing a documentary on slavery in Barbados. And of course, a lot of movements is going on, protesting against the Anglican and the rest of them, the role they played in slavery and the rest of them. So literature, of course, even from biblical studies also, we talk about decolonization. So I don't really think that if a research on decolonization, either from literature, from English studies or linguistic studies or from theological studies, should necessarily be limited to Africa in publication. That is not, I don't really think so. But I made a point earlier on, which also my colleague, Dr. Esia Donko, reiterated. Now, if the nature of the research will better meet a contextual need, then I don't think that we must publish it outside the continent of Africa. The third thing I want to say, which I repeated, I also said earlier on, I don't necessarily belong to the school of thought, even though in my experience also I've had to suffer that too. But I don't necessarily belong to the school of thought that insists that quality is synonymous with America or Asia or Europe. I don't really think so. So perhaps if our universities begin to place emphasis on the quality of research more than the location of publication, then it will encourage researchers to publish both on the continent of Africa and outside the continent of Africa, realizing that when they do so, it will favor them. The last thing I would like to mention is that, you see, going back to what I said earlier, that the soft infrastructure, most of our journals here on this continent, if you search them on the web, you may not see them. You may not see them. Some of them are still hard print, and sometimes they try to do one or two attempts to publish maybe online. So I also think that if the major journals, like the one we are trying to bring up in the university here, we have a few here in the university here, are also consistently insisting on visibility by creating and maintaining platforms that have the digital object identifiers. I think that even if I publish here and it's quality paper, somebody in the farthest part of the world will still read it. because he can access the journal. When he's doing his research and looking for resources, he's looking for materials similar to what he's doing, those papers will come out. Those papers will come out. So I think those are some of the things that we could begin to think of on this continent, whereby we would enhance visibility, so that even if I publish in Nigeria, Ghana, India, Egypt, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, or Zimbabwe, or Uganda, or Tanzania, that research is available to anybody, anywhere in the world who wants to read it. So these are just a few things I would like to say.
Okay, just to add one more point before I let you go is,
Yeah.
do you think, in your experience, African journals, I mean, from the experience you have gathered from your field, are playing a catch up? Because the journals from the West, they have been, some of them have been established hundreds of years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
but African journals playing a catch up, and at what speed can they really catch up?
You know, the question you are asking, I taught a class not long ago, and in my class, a student brought up an issue trying to describe in a different way. And I say, no, what we are trying to say was actually a Western weapon to suppress Africa, even though it's seen from a different perspective. For us here on this continent, I would not really say catch up. Just like, when did our universities begin? Maybe the oldest university in sub-Saharan Africa. If you are talking about maybe like Legon, talk about Makerere here, except for South Africa, because of the influence of the whites that have places like maybe Stellenbosch, Cape Town, and the rest of them, and University of Nairobi here. They are mostly in the 50s and the 60s. And actually, most of them came up in the 70s. In the 70s. So if you consider also the evolution of university education, I mean indigenous university education, not the ones our pioneers went to Europe and America to get, indigenous university education. Because of also colonial issues, these things only came when our people here, our forefathers, began to insist that it's time for them to have a voice. To have a voice. So if you look at that evolution, where we talk about the 60s, mostly the 70s, and then the 80s, and of course we now have the private universities all over the world, I would not really say catch up. It is maybe when the dawn has come on us, when the dawn has come on us, and that the thing, that's what I would say. I would also not say catch up, because when it comes to resources, I'm not sure we'll ever be able to catch up, because we don't have all the resources that are available to the West there. We don't have all the resources. So rather, I would want to say that it is now that the dawn has come upon us that we are now trying to take the initiative to be able to do what, supposing we had a time in the 19th century, in the 18th century, to establish our own universities. We would have grown over time, but we know the colonial effect, which can never be written off. And the where it left Africa, the struggle that Africa had to be able to take off that shelf. And even at that too, if we look at all the fields of study, even with the cloud that Africa had at a certain time, we still have very erudite African scholars. So I wouldn't want to use the word catch up, because the factors that have kept us where we are were external to us. I think that is how I want to say from that perspective.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but let us do the best we can, and then if our wealthy young men and women can actually, our philanthropic millionaires, could really understand that investing in education is a worthy investment, then a lot of researches would be done, publications also will be made.
All right, thank you, Prof. Let me finally ask Dr. Asia Donko. Now, Prof. Former has said we're not playing catch up. We should develop at our pace. We need investment from our industries. Of course, that is how science works in this part of the world. There's collaboration between the university and industry and government. That is how it works. Now, if the situation we find Africa, and we need to develop at our own pace, and we need to bring all these players into space, and we need to build infrastructures. In your opinion, in journal publishing, how much of a problem does Africa have?
All right, thank you very much. I want to raise probably two key issues, one of which Prof had mentioned, and maybe that is the dominant issue that I would like to raise or reiterate to respond to your question. You see, issue of visibility had become probably what we call in Africa a bird. If you take it, you have taken fortune. If you leave it, you have left fortune. It's a proverbial bird. And so visibility has become something that university institutions are all trying. In fact, in your earlier submission, you indicated that University of Cape Coast is the best in Africa, best in West Africa. We are also fourth in Africa. Why are we first in Africa and first in Ghana, first in West Africa, fourth in Africa? It's based on ranking by Times Higher Education. And this is as a result of publications that are indexed, you see. And so universities are trying to ensure that the outputs that they put out in journals that are indexed so that the visibility will be seen. And if this will be seen, then what do we put in place as Africa so that our journals can also have what Prof indicated as having the technological, the electronic technology, where if you publish in that, then everywhere you can be seen. I believe strongly that that is what Africa journals need, particularly, so that the visibility will be known irrespective of where the reader is. And then the institutions will have their visibility interest also, attained irrespective of where the paper is published, either Ghana, Nigeria, or whatever. The other has to do with the conscience that we also want to put in the context of publication. And I think that is what Dr. Eunice was talking about, the decolonization, right? And this is where universities and institutions that are into publications and journal production must have. It doesn't mean that we are supposed to always think foreign for us to show our quality. No, it means that we have to have the quality here, and therefore the quality must also be, as a friend would say, local and global. Let me give you a quick debate that I have had with some of my young professors. When it comes to paper review for even promotion for whatever in the universities, they want an index journal. But the question is it the quality of the paper or the quality of the journal that is important? You see, because you can have a very good quality of a paper in a predatory journal, and you can have a paper that may not match the quality we are talking about, but in a different journal. And Prof, whilst you were having the workshop, you mentioned one where the reviewers thought that it was the best, and you realize that no, there were some gaps even in the review, but it was published in a high top ranked journal. And so we as Africans must have that conscience to ask ourselves, are we interested in the quality of the journal, or we are interested in the quality of the paper? Does it mean that every paper that is published in a quality journal that is ranked based on the H-index and the GIA means that all papers that are published in that journal are quality? Which I don't believe so. And that is the debate. And I think
I think that is a very good point to leave it, really. Are we interested in the quality of the paper or the quality of the journal? Okay, I see Dr. Eunice from Bele here. I don't know if your network will allow you. I wanted to give you the last chance because a lot of things have happened since you have been jumping out and jumping in. But one of the things that we raised here was you are going direction of decolonization. You want to bring Africans back to publishing in Africa. And the question I wanted to ask you was, are we ready to deal with that? If every African makes decision, no more international publication or publish in Africa, are we ready to deal with that problem, Dr. Fombele? Just use 1 minute to tell me what you think so that we know. Oh, she's jumped out again. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it has been fantastic discussion. Time will not permit us to finish. I have loads of questions and thoughts that have really come up from what we have discussed here. And I believe that you have also found these discussions quite interesting. Those who are young in the scientific publishing career, you can take some of this home to think about them. But I just want to thank our panelists, and I would like to give a few minutes to the audience. Please, if you have something to say, just raise your hand. Let me see how much we can take before we end it this evening. Please, if you want to add something, just raise your hand. Use the raise hand button. Use the raise hand button so that we can take it. Okay, I have John Abe-Niav. Please, the floor is yours. Just make it snappy.
Thank you. So I thank you so much for this very important lecture. It's quite educative, and I think that it's good for those of us who are taking a PhD. I just want to understand the requirement to publish at least in 3 journals in some schools before you graduate as a PhD student. Are they looking at a very, like a paper that is big paper that you have written a whole lot, or just something small in some of these journals? Because I'm looking at you using within the 3 years space to publish 3 journals, looking at the time it takes for some journals to even publish papers when you submit to them. Thank you.
All right, Prof. Woma, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, here in Kenya, it's expected that the publication should actually come from your doctoral research. If the dissertation journey has been very successful and well guided, before you graduate or just before you defend, I think it will be very easy, or it's possible, to be able to get to quality publications out of that. And like we have said earlier on, there are many there are many platforms. Some may take you a year, some may take you 1.5 years, but like I did mention earlier on, if you have those ones, that is when people now go to those ones that may take them 3 months or 6 months to publish. So I think that would be a choice that the student will make, but sometimes also because in some universities you are required to actually include the name of your advisor. We don't insist on that here. For that research, maybe your advisor has also built a network. And if he has built a network, probably when the manuscript is submitted, it might be easier in journals where he has met, it might be easier to have them publish within a short time as well. But again, there are many journals that some students are considering that may enable them to publish fast.
Okay, thank you, Prof. And just to add to that, I think it's always good to check your local requirements for this. So check with your local requirement to see really the specifics, because this can vary from university to university. Yeah. All right. I have Simon Agongo Azure. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Bright. In fact, I'm learning a lot. I'm also beginning as a scholar, and through this forum, we are able to learn from the senior colleagues. I want to find out if all your publications are from one journal. Is there anything wrong in the academia?
Goodness me. All right, Dr. Esia Donko, that is your question. I don't know if I can answer that one. It's so tough, but please help us.
One of my professors, when he applied for full professor, they told him in the review papers, they told him that his publications are in journals that are in reproductive health. And so he was denied promotion. Some institutions have this, that if you publish in one journal, it has ethical implication. There are so many journals in the world, so many journals in Africa. Why are you focusing on one? Is that the only journal that has interest in the area of study? It raises ethical issues. And so it's not very, you are not encouraged to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Simon, you see that I couldn't answer better than that. In my place where I come from, say, use your tongue to count your teeth. So please, when you begin to publish everything in one journal, then there is trouble. There's fire on the mountain. But okay, finally, let's take from Rencia Bessie. Sorry if I didn't get that right, but please, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, sir. And
Unmute yourself and speak.
thank you very much. And a special thanks to our professors who've given us good lectures. Please, I wish to find out, how do you get to know predatory journals? Because sometimes you publish, you don't even know which one is and which one is not. At some point, when you send out your documents for maybe some academic or to some professionals, they'll tell you that this is a predatory journal. So how do I get to know it, that this one is a predatory and this one is not? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Manisha. I think I will answer that one. Okay. I mean, this is a signal that you didn't follow us on Friday. Okay. Did you attend our lecture on Friday? No, Manisha, you didn't. Anyway, my colleague, Dr. Oladejo, we put the link. We just had it on Friday. I think the bigger challenge from your question would be, how do you differentiate not good journals in Africa from the predatory ones? How do you do that? Because in the West, it may be easier due to the indexing and some other indicators used, but in Africa, it becomes much more difficult. But if you watch the presentation we had on Friday, there are some ways you can begin to have some signal whether this journal is a good one or not a good one to publish. I see Rufus is raising his hand, and well, I want to have mercy on him to take him as the last person for this evening. Please, Rufus, make it snappy, okay? You are the last one. Please don't raise your hand again, anyone. Rufus, unmute yourself and speak. Okay, it looks like Rufus doesn't want to speak anymore. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot thank our panel enough for the fantastic work. And you can see one of our presentations last year was Science and Ignorance, to emphasize the point that you may start a very ambitious project to find answers, but you end up finding ignorance, more questions. All right, this evening, I'm not sure how much justice we have done, whether we have raised more questions than answers, but that is really the beauty of scholasticism, academia, research, to raise questions. And just to say that there are many things for us to discuss within the African African space of publishing. And so we have used the example of the arts and humanities. And the first problem we had was that where do you start? Because arts and humanities is a very wide area. And that was a very big shocker for me. And that was to ask, why did you even formulate that topic like that? Because we are so different. And then we move into other problems surrounding Africa. And I think we have come to the point that we shouldn't aim at just competing, whether this journal is of high quality or not, but rather the quality of the work we do. And that is a very important thing to think about. The quality of the work you do is important. So we continue this discussion. Next month, I will be telling you more about the field that we'll be getting into, but I just want to use this opportunity to thank the panelists, Professor Samson Woma joining us from Kenya. And we thank you, Prof, for this opportunity, for sharing your opinion. We appreciate the effort. And then Dr. Kobina Esia Donko joining us from Ghana. We appreciate this opportunity you have had with us to discuss these issues. And finally, I'm not sure whether Dr. Eunice Ponce from Bele has joined us again, but we appreciate. She brought that aspect, the women aspect, that really begin to push us to elaborate discussion. And I hope we can have sometime to begin to discuss the issue of decolonization and African science. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me. Give a thumbs up to the panel. It has been a very good outing this evening. All right, so let me bring us to a close this evening. Yes, this is the man and women in town now who won the ASFI impact essay. We are glad to have them. Please go to ASFI website to see what they have said about their encounter with the African Science Frontiers initiatives. The 5th edition of the seminar series will be focusing on the biological, chemical, and agricultural sciences, and that will be coming on the 28th of May. Please, if you enjoy this evening, then you know that we'll have more things to offer. And the fact that all the fields we discuss affect everybody, all right? Biological, if you're a human being, it affects you. Chemical, if you're a human being, it affects you. And of course, agricultural. So don't say this is not my field. Please come to join us to see what is also happening in the area of publishing in these disciplines. And then the 16th edition of Dr. Maron's research tips and tricks will be focusing on how to peer review. You see, this evening, one of the things that was mentioned is the quality also of the peer review and the editorial processes may affect the choices people may make in where to publish. If you are an established researcher, you are an upcoming researcher, it is good to know how do you pick up a scientific paper if you're invited to review and provide good comments that will either help to improve the paper or, of course, science thrives in self-scrutiny, and peer review is one of those ways to self-scrutinize ourselves to ensure that what we do will be beneficial to our field of research and the society at large. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much this evening for joining us, and I hope you have enjoyed this discussion this evening. You can unmute yourself if you want to make your voice heard. If you want us to hear your voice, now is the time. But otherwise, we'll see you when we see again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Thank
you,
you,
thank you. And
I'm excited.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Wonderful presentation.
Thank
I'm
you,
very grateful.
everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. And the team of panelists, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was good.